Hey, it's James Murray. We're in the NetNewsLedger newsroom. We're continuing our coverage of the Nishnawbe-Aski Nation election. With me in the studio is David Flood, who's one of the candidates for Deputy Grand Chief. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, James. Thanks for having me. Appreciate having the opportunity to be on NNL.
Thank you. How's the campaign going? What have you been doing to, first of all, introduce yourself to our readers and viewers who might not know who you are yet, but then what's happening in the campaign?
Perfect. I'd be happy to. Myself, personally, I come from Matachewan First Nation, which is in the eastern portion of NAN territory. We were one of the signatories in 1906. I'm a 43-year-old husband, father. I've served politically in my community. I'm a great-great-grandson to our treaty signatory at Matachewan First Nation. And I was compelled, in principle, that the recent title case in British Columbia, I think, has rocked a constitutional question around Aboriginal title and the rights of Indigenous people in Canada, in the Canadian context. And as far as the campaign is going, I was out at the Wendigo Council. They graciously invited an opportunity and created space on the agenda for the candidates to make presentation. We had a good showing. 2 Grand Chief and 7 Deputy Grand Chief candidates were present. And we had a great opportunity to sit roughly for 10 minutes each. It was a quick piece of airtime with the leadership, but they certainly wanted to, again, get to know the candidates and start to understand what portions of their platform, as you can imagine, it's a team that the chiefs get to pick and pull together. And everybody has their forte and background and expertise.
What areas of expertise would you bring as a Deputy Grand Chief to NAN?
In principle, I've always been in touch and grounded with land use, and that respect and honor and privilege that comes from the land and the resources available to us. The stewardship role, I believe that most people would say, is intrinsic to our culture. Ever since I can remember, I was enamored. I was in love with the land and what it had to offer. My parents were not shy to put a pellet gun in my hand and snare wire in my hand and let me go off and spend hours in the forest, and many times often alone, and sometimes I could nudge my siblings and get them to come along with me. But for whatever reason, I truly enjoyed bringing back, the berries, the hazelnuts, the things that were available and abundant in the forest and land and environment around. So it was a natural fit for me to progress into in education, to take a forest technologist diploma. I graduated from the technologist program, and it's strictly an information session, information gathering role as a technologist that you play. It's not a lot of management function.
Right.
And for whatever reason, after just working a couple seasons as a technologist, I was compelled that there's more to this than collecting information. So I went on to take my undergraduate in Bachelor of Science in Forest Management. I graduated from there. At the same time, started to take my exposure to Native studies and sort of the geopolitical situation in Canada at the time. The 1996 Royal Commission on Aboriginal People came out, and we were fully in depth at pulling that apart. And I mean, Canadians along the way are becoming quite educated, quite supportive, and they want to see that level of reconciliation that's required. But my passion for my forte in lands, natural resource environment started at a young age and continues today. I served NAN politically as a technician from 2003 to 2007. I ran in the 2006 election at that time. I had garnered 10 votes, which was a great honor to receive those votes. I didn't get carried through to the next rounds of voting. But again, predominantly, I believe because it's a leadership vote and NAN territory is large, there's leadership from west to east, and it's important to get the message out. And again, appreciate the opportunity here at NNL. But my background is in lands and resources, policy and environment.
And that's going to be an area, especially in NAN territory, because first of all, we're all treaty people.
Absolutely.
And that includes the mining companies and the forestry companies and the companies that are the business opportunities that would be on traditional lands and on treaty lands. And moving forward, we've got in Northern Ontario, we have the Ring of Fire, and we have mining opportunities, and there's a balancing act that needs to be played. Getting cooperation and employment and opportunity for Nishnawbe people is so important, and it's got to be a huge part of it.
There is an extremely high level of commitment, I think, from our leadership group across NAN territory. We've got Matawa Tribal Council leading a framework agreement at the provincial level. You know, that's something that I truly believe that the NAN leadership, as advocacy body, we are meant to actually support and compel and make sure we open those doors and clear lines of communication and provide support where necessary, both at the provincial and federal level on matters like that. Another great example of leadership and governance is through the Omishkego Council. They're heading into their election for their Grand Chief and Deputy, and it's a vote of the people. I mean, in the truest sense, you know, we are windows and doorways is exactly what the NAN leadership are meant to be. We are meant to bring that level of awareness. We are meant to bring that representation that the chiefs delegate and ask us to through the resolutions. And in my time, actually, as a technician, and that was the Northeast Regional Forestry forester, you know, I took the time to actually go back then, and there was over 245 resolutions related to lands and resources. The speaking notes are there. The chiefs have spoken. The communities have spoken. You know, and it actually speaks to some of the direct fundamentals that actually I believe that we need to actually call the question of. The Chilcotin decision was followed quite recently by the Kuwaitan decision, the Big Grassy decision. Yes. And I think what eloquently was said there by the Supreme Court of Canada was, clearly in the Constitution there's delegated powers, the division of powers under Section 92 for the use and management of resources by the provinces. Yeah. For far too long the provinces has utilized that clause and said we can do what we want. I think the issue now is, since 1982, Section 35, which is often deemed as the empty clause, it has a title, but it's deemed an empty clause. Well, what we've seen since 1982 is our leadership stepping forward and actually filling in those gaps and saying, these are the clauses that we actually want to have filled. And it's related to governance. It's the inherent right to govern the lands, territories of which our people reside. And on top of that, which is equally more exciting, is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Extremely exciting fundamental building blocks, and what's truly unique about that is that the Declaration of Nishnawbe-Aski Nation in 1977 echoes many of the words that are prevalent today in the news, the media, the international communication. So I think the time is right, the time is real. There's a reason why I ran in 2006, and there's a reason why I'm making myself available to the leadership and the people of NAN territory today. I'm compelled. I serve my community politically. I've served my community technically. I still work with communities in a technical capacity and advisory role today. Often I look at myself and consider myself as I'm more of a leatherman, not a jackknife. You can do a lot with a jackknife, but I look at myself more as a leatherman. I've got a lot more going on and making myself available. And why I say that specifically is, while I've expressed lands and resources is my forte, environment, there's not much I can't put my hand and mind on and around to actually help support. And why I say that is that I want the leadership team and the chiefs, when they pick their leadership team, to actually realize I'm not a silo. And I hope when they pick their leadership team, they look at everybody and say, can they offer their heart, hand, and mind to all matters?
Kind of circles that all have to interlink together.
Absolutely.
For the entire leadership team.
That's the way we're going to get success.
Skills. Yeah, exactly.
That's the way we're going to get success.
David, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing with us.
Miigwech.
And good luck on the trail.
Thank you very much. Look forward to coming again.
I'm James with NetNewsLedger. We're continuing our coverage of the Nishnawbe-Aski election. And if you're a candidate for Grand Chief or Deputy Grand Chief and wondering why you haven't had your interview yet, contact us. It's james@netnewsledger.com. And we're clear.